Most men get incredibly frustrated knowing that they're genuinely trying hard to repair their relationship, but their wife still seems emotionally distant. The truth is, you can be working very hard, but if you're doing one or more of these four things, then all that effort is really just working harder at pushing her further away from you. So in today's episode, I'm going to give you the 4 subtle things you may be doing without even knowing that it's causing your wife to feel less safe with you, pushing her connection and attraction further and further away. Let's jump in. I don't know if this sounds familiar to you in your experience, but I know for me, I was exactly like this for a long time. A lot of men only really start to emotionally lock in once we feel the relationship is kind of starting to slip away. That was a bad pattern for me, and I don't want to say I was doing it intentionally because I wasn't, but it really felt like I almost saw it as a challenge that I had to win. There were long periods of complacency in the relationship and things started slipping, and that's when I locked in and the changes started to suddenly happen for me. So think about that for yourself. If she has started to get a bit more distant, did you then get a bit more attentive? If she's ever mentioned possible separation, is it then you thought, I better work on something to make myself better? If you have, don't feel bad. It's actually way more common than you think. So the point is not to beat yourself up over a mistake. And I don't even want to call it a mistake because, to be fair, the effort is usually genuine. Like, you do care and you care about trying. So there is no mistake in being genuine and putting in effort, but the mistake lies in the timing of that change being fear-driven. That is the kicker that got me into repeated heartbreak for over a decade. When we turn all our attention to spiking our effort when the relationship feels like it's threatened to us, the last thing we think about is the experience that she is having. But she's experiencing those sudden spikes of effort as well. From an emotional standpoint, it can be easily understood as a feeling of instability to her. It feels very reactive in nature. Think about it this way. If someone only becomes attentive, more loving, and self-aware every time they think they're about to lose you, your nervous system will never fully relax around that change either. Because part of you will start to wonder, is this actually who this person is becoming, or is it just another temporary wave and I know that it's not really for real? And unfortunately, a lot of men unintentionally create that exact pattern. They go through emotional cycles. 1 week they're fully locked in and maybe get a few things more stabilized. However, because she's unclear about if this is the real you, she will test you, often unconsciously, and you totally collapse during that test. You get back into panic mode and frustration and arguments with her because the result you wanted seemed to hit a speed bump or a roadblock. That inconsistency matters far more than you realize, because women trust patterns way more than moments or simple words. And this is one of the biggest reasons emotional safety gets damaged to a point where it becomes very hard to rebuild for her if you don't know what you're doing. Again, I used to think that if I just cared and tried hard enough during those difficult moments, she would see that and everything would eventually work itself out. But emotional safety is not built through those emotional surges. It really takes consistency of showing up grounded over time, and that is what builds the reinforced positive experience with you that will shred any confirmation bias that was created when she had no clue which version of you would show up. But is it just when she's pulling away and you put in more effort where emotional safety gets broken? Nope. Another big reason she may not still feel emotionally safe with you is because your emotional state changes based on hers. This is different than just when she is really noticeably pulling away emotionally, and it's something women can pick on very easily if it starts to happen. Think about how time has gone by in your marriage or your long-term relationship, and you start to be so familiar with basically everything about each other. You can read her tone, you can read her body language, her texting patterns, how warm she sounds or how affectionate she seems. What happens though, without you realizing it, that over time, because you're so familiar with her, eventually your emotional state starts rising and falling based on what she's giving you emotionally that day. So if she's in a warm and happy mood, you're all good. You can relax and things are fine. But if she comes home after work and she just seems quiet, you start wondering what's wrong, and it really has an impact on your mind. It messes with you a lot, and you start completely changing your mood based on it. And she becomes a project that you essentially have to fix in terms of her mood. Now, there's nothing wrong with wanting to kind of help her or see her in a good mood. The issue is how entangled it gets with your own mood. So you start sulking when she's sulking, or being frustrated when she's frustrated. And it just ends up putting so much pressure on her to be in a good mood all the time. Instead of feeling emotionally held by you, where your mood is not impacted and you're able to communicate with her and make her feel safe, where she can let out those emotions and then feel better, she starts feeling emotionally responsible for you if you can't do that. Like, if she's not perfect all the time, you're basically going to be adding double the emotional weight. In the worst case scenarios, certain guys will just keep snowballing and overthinking everything about her mood and start confronting her about how she's acting. So if they think that the hug they got was either too short or cold, they start to ask her what's wrong, or say like, what kind of hug was that? Or she had a stressful day at work that has literally nothing to do with you, and she comes home to what is supposed to be a steady environment, but she has to be guarded and feels unsafe because she knows that you will be so impacted by her emotional state, even though it gave her a bit of stress in that instance has nothing to do with you or the relationship. All of these things can be so detrimental because on the surface, they are small individual instances, but they compound into making her ability to feel safe with you become obliterated over time. She simply feels like she cannot exist emotionally around you. This is why I stress emotional groundedness so much, and it's a big pillar in my relationship rebuild coaching program. Now, this next one is extremely misunderstood, and honestly, I think this destroys emotional safety in a way that most men never see coming. I know this because this was a total blindside to me when I learned that this was causing so many problems in my past relationships. When we talk about emotional safety, I've sort of done my own kind of unofficial polling and coaching calls where I've asked, like, what are some things that come to mind when you hear the words emotional safety? And a lot of men think emotional safety means never disagreeing with her, never upsetting her or making her feel uncomfortable, sort of just kind of softening everything, or just constantly accommodating her, basically trying to keep the peace. And as I said, I used to think this way too. I thought if I avoided conflict enough, agreed enough, and became accommodating enough, women would feel safer with me. But what I eventually realized the hard way is that women don't feel safe at all around men who emotionally abandon themselves. That actually creates instability underneath the niceness, not safety. Because now she starts feeling that your calmness is performative instead of grounded. You're not actually calm. You're just trying not to lose her. There's a huge difference, and women feel that difference very deeply. This is where I would start walking on eggshells, suppressing my opinion, over-apologizing, constantly asking like, are we okay? Or is she okay? Basically trying to get everything perfectly and tiptoeing around her to avoid triggering some emotional shutdown by her by not making her upset. And the reality is, it's just fear underneath all those actions that we will be rejected from her or we're going to lose the relationship for good. The thing is, trying not to upset her is not the same thing as making her feel safe. In fact, many women eventually stop trusting men who become overly accommodating during a relationship crisis. Why? Because the emotional energy stops feeling solid. You stop feeling grounded, and you really start feeling emotionally dependent on keeping her comfortable. And eventually, hidden resentment usually starts building underneath all that niceness as well. Because no human can be permanently suppressing themselves without tension eventually leaking out somewhere. That's why many men go from overly patient to being suddenly cold with her, overly accommodating to then just being frustrated and withdrawn because they're not seeing what they want. And now her nervous system really feels less safe because the emotional atmosphere feels more unpredictable than ever. This is why emotional safety is not built through passivity. It's built through grounded honesty, through emotional consistency, through being able to disagree calmly without collapsing. And it's built through maintaining self-respect while being emotionally safe to connect with. That combination, it matters enormously. Women relax around grounded strength. So if you can learn how to stay emotionally connected to yourself, even during all the uncertainty, that creates tremendous emotional safety over time. And the fourth reason your wife may still not feel emotionally safe with you is because she no longer knows which version of you she's gonna get. It's obvious that if you're emotionally unstable in terms of yelling or explosive anger, there's gonna be a huge gap in safety for her. However, emotional instability can be much quieter than that and still have a compounding effect on her safety just as detrimentally as yelling over time. That quiet emotional instability can look like heavy sighs, coldness, like frustration, shutting down, some up and down mood swings, passive resentment we talked about that just kind of builds up when you're trying to be the follower of the happy wife, happy life mantra that really doesn't make things better at all. So because you are completely unpredictable, the shoe is now on her foot, wondering if you're going to be calm today. If she shares something with you, will you get frustrated? Or if you're going to turn on her and go cold if she doesn't respond to something you say the way you think she should. Once she has to start bracing around you because she has no clue which you is going to show up, you better believe that emotional safety starts disappearing rapidly for her. This is why passive resentment is so destructive. They are basically like emotional landmines that are just strewn all over the relationship dynamic. Emotional safety is deeply tied to consistent predictability. Not, we're going to go to the same Chili's every Friday night for dinner at 7 p.m. on the dot and sit at the exact same table predictability. Emotional predictability. Knowing that your nervous system is stable and that difficult moments do not completely destabilize you emotionally. When you can do that and be able to use other communication skills that make her feel heard, that is what allows the softness and openness to slowly return on her end again. It has nothing to do with being a perfect communicator, no relationship tactics, and not really saying all the right key words, but emotional steadiness over time. That is the absolute key. This is really the most important part to understand. You can't convince someone or trick them into feeling emotionally safe with you. It has to be done through emotional consistency of who you become over time. And if you want to go deeper on learning how to rebuild emotional safety and her attraction the right way without becoming needy or manipulative, go watch my free Relationship Rebuild Masterclass. I break down the exact framework I teach men who are trying to save their marriage and completely transform the emotional dynamic of their relationship. The link for that free masterclass is down in the description and pinned comment below. If you want to continue watching here first, I highly recommend this next video, Why Your Wife Doesn't Feel Safe With You, Even If You're Trying. I'll see you over in that next video.